The rules of the samurai are guided by the Bushido Code, emphasizing loyalty, courage, honor, respect, and if you're playing the game Disco Samurai, a sick beat! Created by first-time developer Pixel Fiber Games, this new rhythm game is a fun mix of cyberpunk science fiction and virtual reality-based espionage, all of which is put to an infectious beat that you're not going to be able to get out of your head. So grab your favorite katana and put on those dancing shoes because this is my review of Disco Samurai. This is the story of Fox, a young red-haired woman who plays video games by day and tends her father's tavern by night. When her friend Gary needs somebody to tag along on a job inside of a new virtual world simulation known as Disco Samurai, Fox is all too eager to help. However, it won't take long for her to realize that she and Gary are way over their heads, accidentally getting in the middle of a powerful government and a group of elite hackers trying to tear it all down. With no choice but to get to the bottom of the mystery, Fox will need to use her samurai skills to get herself out of trouble. The futuristic setup is certainly intriguing, but the real fun comes when you start brawling with the virtual opponents inside of the game. Because this is a rhythm game, all of your attacks and moves will need to be timed to the beat of the song. What this game wants you to do is to watch the enemy's pattern and dodge and counter in different ways until they're stunned. Which at that point, you can start to unload your fury on them, just as long as it's timed to the beat. What makes this tricky is that there are actually a bunch of different types of moves to counter. For example, you'll start out with your basic parry move, where you'll hit the shoulder button right as the enemy strikes. This leads to an overhead parry, where you'll need to hold the shoulder button down for a certain amount of time, as well as a multi-parry, where you'll have to double tap the shoulder button to avoid taking damage. Players will also need to roll out of danger, throw objects found around the level, and know when to dodge a bullet. It's easy enough when you're only dealing with one type of attack, but the game likes to throw complicated combinations at you, which are designed to keep you on your toes. The emphasis here is on perfectly countering a string of attacks, which both looks cool and feels great when you got the rhythm down. The combat itself isn't nearly as deep as the defense, usually consisting of simple, on-beat swipes of the samurai sword. That said, you do have a few other attacks, like a gun that you can shoot when you've earned enough flow, a meter that fills up when you combo parries and take damage. One of my favorite moves is a simple kick. Yeah, that may not sound like much, but it's just so much fun kicking people into garbage cans and right in front of speeding cars on a busy highway. Now, instead of traditional stages, each section of the chapter is a standalone diorama shown from a slightly overhead perspective. Some stages are large and full of items, while others will be small and cramped, barely enough room to stage a proper sword fight. This allows the developers to mix things up with the stage designs. While a lot of them are just straight up beat 'em up fare where you're squaring off against multiple waves of guards, there are also a bunch that will require a little bit more puzzle solving. For example, it might be beneficial to keep those grenade-throwing enemies around so you can lob their grenades at the armored guards. That's a lot more effective than going at them with your sword. Look, this is not the kind of game where you're just going to nail every level on your first try. In fact, it took me multiple attempts to counter to the beat and defeat all the bad guys, especially with the multiple waves coming in, each with their own combination of moves and attacks. Despite being a veteran rhythm game junkie, I found myself stumbling when trying to keep all the different patterns straight. Not in every level, but every once in a while I would just hit a wall, completely overwhelmed by the amount of enemies that they were throwing at me. Apparently, the developers must have anticipated this because they've made the smart decision to allow the player to change the difficulty at literally any time. That means if you ever get stuck on a particularly hard stage, you can give yourself a fighting chance by lowering the difficulty and then adjust it right back up when you're ready for the next stage. This doesn't really change the speed or how the enemies attack, but rather it gives you a few extra health points to play with, which is usually the difference between winning and losing. You'll do this through 7 extremely long stages. Stages that might actually be a little bit too long if you ask me. Look, don't get me wrong, I had a great time fighting to the beat and loved how the story progressed. But there were definitely times when I wanted that progression to speed up a little bit. There's a lot of filler crammed into each stage, which only slows things down at a time when I wanted them to be quicker. And weirdly enough, the game's weakest link is this motorcycle minigame that pops up from time to time. These show up to break up the action and have the player driving on a 3-lane highway. The idea is to dodge the debris in the road and eventually jump over obstacles and shoot at enemies on each side of the street. While not necessarily difficult, I found these sections to be painfully dull, no matter how much they tried to spruce them up over the course of the game. And apparently, the developers actually anticipated this kind of reaction, because if you fail them a few times, they'll ask you if you want to just skip right over them and then go back to the beat-em-up action. Apart from that, I really enjoyed my time jumping in and out of Disco Samurai. The game does a good job at keeping the espionage story interesting, and each chapter adds something new to the gameplay. It also has this really catchy beat that somehow rides the line between being extremely simple, yet not so simple that you end up getting sick of it after only a few minutes. The same goes for the different stages. Although many are similar in look, the developer's done a good job of giving each of them their own personality. The backgrounds do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to the world building, and a few of them lead to some truly epic battles. Look, I get it. Disco Samurai is hardly the first game to tie beat-em-up action to the rhythm genre, but it is one of the few to actually do it well. The action is easy to learn and tough to master, and there's more than enough content packed into the game's 7 lengthy stages. This is a strong debut from developer Pixel Fiber Games. Disco Samurai is an addictive brawler with a catchy beat and steep learning curve. The cyberpunk espionage story is compelling, but the real star here is the gameplay, which continues to find new ways to keep the action fresh and challenging. While I might complain that the levels have a bit too much filler and the motorcycle minigame is aggressively boring, neither of these things should keep you from discovering this exciting beat-em-up. Just be ready for a challenge, because let me tell you, Disco Samurai is ready to boogie. Can you dig it? Hey, thanks for watching my review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What franchise could use a catchy disco beat? Admitted, you always wanted to see Master Chief in a pair of bell-bottoms. Oh man, I can't wait to see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we're going to be back later this week with a review of #DriveRally, as well as a new review crew episode, assuming that Nintendo actually announces something. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.